Prologue, the blood-red chariot. Twilight glowed like a dying ember across the slopes of Olympus as a restless wind rustled through the pines. High above mortal lands, Ares stood upon the precipice of the god's domain. The sky trembled with the scent of blood, a storm yet to break. He could feel it deep in his bones, the promise of a war that would echo for centuries. The Trojan War. His chariot, forged from blackened bronze and decorated with the skulls of conquered kings, shimmered with anticipation. Its horses, breathing fire and smoke, clawed at the ground. Beside him rode Phobos and Deimos, fear and terror incarnate, his children, his only true companions. Ares' eyes burned red beneath his crested helm, not with hatred, not with passion, but with hunger. This war, unlike any other, would test the boundaries of divinity. It would offer him something even he hadn't tasted in eons: redemption. In Olympus, he was scorned. Among mortals, he was feared, but rarely worshipped. In Athens, they built temples to Athena. In Sparta, they bled in his name. And yet, he was always the outsider, the unloved god. But this war? This was a stage, and Ares had waited long enough to step into the light. Chapter 1 of Gods and Grudges. Ares was born from storm and pride. His father, Zeus, the ruler of Olympus, was a god of storms and justice. His mother, Hera, queen of the heavens, was wrath incarnate. From the moment Ares screamed into life, his existence was defined not by love, but by conflict. The other gods looked upon him with disdain. Even Zeus, his own father, called him a brute. "You delight only in blood and slaughter," Zeus once spat. Ares had no retort. The accusation was true, but not complete. What the gods failed to see was that war, in all its carnage, birthed civilization. From conquest came kingdoms. From death came law. Ares understood this, even if Olympus chose not to. But worst of all was Athena. She was everything Ares was not: calculated, revered, strategic. She was war with purpose. He was war with passion. And the Greeks adored her. To them, Athena represented honor, reason, balance. Ares was chaos. Athena's birth had been a spectacle. She had emerged, fully grown, from Zeus's forehead, clad in armor and brilliance. Even in the moment of her first breath, she had stolen the thunder from Ares' name. He would never forgive her. And so, for eons, their rivalry simmered, not in words, but in glances across the halls of Olympus, in the way Athena would outshine him during divine councils, in the way Zeus smiled at her and sneered at him. Ares burned with the injustice, but he bided his time, because someday blood would spill, and when it did, they would call his name first. It began with celebration and ended in prophecy. On the day of Pelis and Thetis' wedding, all the gods were invited, save for one, Eris, goddess of discord. Spurned and furious, she tossed a golden apple into the banquet hall. Etched into its surface was a simple phrase: "To the fairest." 3 goddesses claimed it: Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. Zeus, unwilling to choose, commanded that a mortal decide. That mortal was Paris, Prince of Troy. Each goddess offered a bribe. Hera promised dominion, Athena offered victory, and Aphrodite, most cunning of all, vowed the love of Helen, the most beautiful woman in the world. Ares watched from the shadows of Olympus, amused. He saw the seeds of war being planted not with spears, but with smiles. It was Aphrodite's offer that Paris chose, and Helen was soon taken from Sparta. Menelaus, her husband, cried foul, and the Greeks, united in honor and vengeance, sailed for Troy. Ares said nothing then. He simply walked away, his hand brushing the hilt of his sword. The time had come. This war would not just be fought by mortals, it would be his war, his retribution, his arena. Chapter 3 the lovers, and the net. There are few secrets on Olympus, and even fewer that survive the gaze of Helios, the ever-watchful sun. Ares knew this. He didn't care. Or rather, he cared too much to stop. Aphrodite, radiant and untouched by time, was everything Ares could never claim. Beloved, admired, untouchable. But to him she was real. Not the sculpted marble form the poets adored, but a fire, dangerous, radiant, necessary. Their affair began not in lust, but in shared loneliness. Ares, scorned by the gods, Aphrodite, shackled to Hephaestus, the clever but cold-hearted smith. Their passion was fierce, reckless, and doomed. Helios saw them. His golden eyes pierced the veils of midnight. He whispered the truth to Hephaestus, whose heart was not broken, but hardened. He did not confront them. He planned. A net, spun of threads finer than spider silk but stronger than steel, invisible to gods and mortals alike. He draped it over their love nest, and one night, as Ares lay beside Aphrodite, the trap snapped shut. All Olympus was summoned. Poseidon laughed first. Apollo followed. Even Hermes made jests. Only Hestia looked away. Ares said nothing. Neither did Aphrodite. Shame, like blood, pooled in their silence. Hephaestus released them eventually, but not before the scorn of Olympus had been branded upon Ares' pride. And yet he did not regret. Not the shame, not the laughter, not even the trap. Because in that moment, bound and mocked, he had still felt more alive than in all the sterile battles of Olympus. The god of war had been wanted, desired, loved even. And now in Troy, with blood on the air and vengeance in his chest, he would carve his name into history, not as a lover, as a god. Chapter 4. The Trojan Tide. The sea shuddered with the weight of Greek oaths as 1,000 ships cut through the foam. Over the crests of waves, bronze hulls gleamed like rows of daggers. The Greek alliance had begun its march toward Troy, propelled not just by duty, but vengeance. Ares stood atop the cliffs near the Scamander River, watching it all unfold. To mortals, war was chaos. To him, it was choreography. The early battles were a prelude, a flurry of swordplay and ambition. Young heroes, Achilles, Ajax, Odysseus, cut swaths through Trojan defenses. The gods whispered behind every blow. Ares hesitated to choose a side. The Greeks did not honor him. They spoke Athena's name in strategy tense, not his. Yet Aphrodite had chosen Troy, and through her son Aeneas she beckoned. He wandered the battlefield unseen, letting his essence seep into the hearts of men. Soldiers who once feared battle now howled for it. Courage turned into bloodlust. Troy resisted. Its walls, forged by Poseidon and Apollo, did not yield. Neither did Hector, its shining prince, who carried the dignity of 1,000 warriors. At night, Ares entered dreams. He whispered to kings, promising glory and ruin alike. Priam, the aged Trojan king, heard him and trembled. Then came the day he rode. The sky blackened as Ares entered the fray, flanked by Phobos and Deimos. His armor bled red light. The Greeks fell back in terror, even the mighty quaked. But Athena would not allow it. She descended, cloaked in silver light, and faced her brother across the plain. For a moment the battlefield stilled. War facing wisdom, rage against resolve. They clashed, the earth screamed, the rivers turned black, and as their blows rang out, mortals fled, not from death, but from divinity. When it ended, neither had won. But the message was clear. Ares would not go unchecked. Athena would guard the balance. And so the war burned on, each side pushed not just by kings, but gods. Chapter 5. Clash of Gods and Mortals. The sun blazed over the plains of Ilium as another blood-soaked dawn unfolded. The war had reached its boiling point. Both sides had lost heroes, and now even the gods were restless. Ares, driven by lust for retribution and the thrill of battle, could wait no longer. With his bronze spear in hand and his red-plumed helm glowing like fire, he stormed the battlefield on foot, no longer hiding in divine mist. This was not just war, this was his judgment. Across the field, Greek heroes faltered. One by one, Ares cut through their lines. His presence twisted the minds of men, fanning rage into frenzy. Blood soaked the sand, and screams drowned beneath the clash of iron. Then, Diomedes came. He was no ordinary mortal. Guided by Athena, he bore not only skill, but purpose. As Ares ravaged the Achaean lines, Diomedes stood firm, defiant. Athena whispered in his ear, not with kindness, but precision. Strike him. Do not hesitate. The god of war turned, amused by the mortal's boldness. You would face me? Ares bellowed. Diomedes answered with action. He hurled his spear, and Athena, ever subtle, guided it. The point of the weapon pierced divine flesh. Ares screamed. It was no ordinary cry. It shattered the sky. The birds fell silent. The river's commander froze. Every warrior, Trojan and Greek, dropped their blade and looked up. The scream was not of pain, but humiliation. Ares stumbled back, ichor gushing from the wound. He grasped his chest, not because he was dying, but because he had been wounded by a mortal, a god, laid low by the hands of a man. He vanished from the battlefield, trailing fire and fury in his wake. On Olympus, Zeus glared down at his son. You let pride blind you, again. Ares wanted to retort, but the words died on his tongue. He looked not at Zeus, but at Athena, who stood behind their father, calm and victorious. Always her, he muttered. Wounded in body, broken in spirit, Ares vanished into shadow. The war below raged on, but for the first time, the god of war had become its casualty. Chapter 6. The Warrior's Wound. The halls of Olympus echoed with silence. Not reverence, disappointment. Ares sat alone upon a ledge of clouded marble, staring at the spear wound that no longer bled, but still burned. It wasn't the ichor seeping from his side that wounded him. It was the memory. That moment. The mortal eyes of Diomedes staring back at him, not with fear, but with judgment, as if the god were lesser. He clenched his jaw, but even his fury had dulled. Rage was his shield, and now it had cracked. In its place, a strange hollowness crept in. Then the news reached him. His son, Ascalaphus, had fallen in battle, struck down by Deiphobus, a Trojan prince, in the chaos that followed Ares' retreat. The boy had died screaming his father's name. And Ares? He had been sulking among the clouds. A howl of grief shattered the firmament. Ares hurled his spear across the heavens, shattering the gates of a passing constellation. He leapt up, his body wreathed in fire and thunder. I will return to the field, he growled. I will burn Troy to ash. But Zeus forbade it. No god shall interfere, not now, the king decreed. Ares snarled. He was my son, and many sons will die still, Zeus replied coldly. Even yours. That is the price of war, a price you understand best. It was Athena who stood to block his path as he attempted to descend. She said nothing. Her presence alone was a wall. Ares, blood boiling, towered over her. Move. Still, she said nothing. For a moment, the god of war considered breaking Zeus's law, crashing through the sky and turning the battlefield into a divine massacre. But a vision haunted him. His son, not in glory, but crumpled, forgotten in the dust. He sank to one knee. "I should have been there," he whispered. Athena finally spoke. "You were too busy proving yourself. You forgot to protect what mattered." Her words cut deeper than Diomedes' spear. Later, as the war continued without him, Ares remained in Olympus, not resting but watching. Every scream echoed in his ears, every fire, every fall reflected his failures. And for the first time in eternity, the god of war knew what it meant to lose something he could never win back. Chapter 7. The Cage of Bronze. Before Troy, before the war, before humiliation at Athena's hand, Ares had known another defeat, one so undignified it rarely passed through the lips of gods, and never through his own. It was the story of a jar. The Elodai, twin giants Otis and Ephialtes, were no mere brute forces. They were cunning, bold enough to challenge Olympus itself. One day, they laid a trap not for a mortal king, but for the god of war himself. Ares, drawn to their rising bloodlust, descended to test them. He expected a brief skirmish, a reminder of divine superiority. He was wrong. With enchanted chains and strength that dwarfed mountains, the twins captured him. Before Ares could call upon his divine might, he was cast into a massive bronze jar, its lid sealed with celestial wax. Then, silence. The gods above did not notice, or perhaps they did, and chose to let him rot. For 13 lunar cycles, the god of war sat in that prison. Time lost all meaning. His screams echoed against unyielding bronze. His fists bled, his voice cracked, and no answer ever came. He dreamed during that captivity, not of war, but of being forgotten, cast aside by those he called kin. Even Zeus made no move. Only the huntress Artemis eventually took pity, tricking the giants and freeing him. When Ares emerged, he did not thank her. He could not. What he carried back from that jar was not gratitude, but fury. A fury unlike anything even Olympus had seen. He sharpened his blades until they could slice starlight. He trained with Phobos and Deimos until they forgot what mercy meant. And he swore that never again would he be caged. But now, years later, in the shadow of Troy, the memory returned. Because wasn't he trapped once more? Not in bronze, but in shame. Humiliated by Diomedes, blocked by Athena, banned by Zeus. He clenched his fists. Perhaps the jar had never been opened. Perhaps he had carried it with him all along. Not metal, but memory. He whispered to himself, "Let them mock, let them fear, but I will never be bound again." Above the battlefield, lightning flashed. Ares was not done. Chapter 8. Blood of the Amazons. Far to the east of Troy, beyond the windswept plains and river-choked forests, lived warriors who bore no loyalty to kings or gods, only to each other. The Amazons. Born of harsh lands and harder truths, their legends were whispered by sailors and feared by generals. They were daughters of Ares, not all by blood, but all by fire. Their queen, Hippolyta, bore a girdle of divine origin, a gift from Ares himself, forged in the early days when he still believed legacy could be shaped in flesh and steel. She led her sisters not with tyranny, but with precision, grace, and unrelenting will. And she revered her father. For a time, Ares watched them in silence. In the clamor of Olympus, he was mocked. Among the Amazons, he was honored. He once walked among them, not as a god demanding worship, but as a warrior proving worth. They sparred with him, bloodied him, cheered him. No temples, no hymns, only the bond of battle. But as the years passed, something shifted. Ares began demanding tribute. He ordered raids against men who had not threatened them. He craved their loyalty as he had never demanded it before. Hippolyta resisted. "My sisters were born to fight, not to serve," she said, standing tall before him, her eyes unflinching. Ares, stunned, said nothing. He could destroy kingdoms with a gesture, but his daughter's defiance struck deeper than any blade. He left that day in silence. Later, when Heracles came, sent by Eurystheus to steal the girdle, Ares watched from afar. He could have intervened. He could have turned Heracles to ash, but he did not. When Hippolyta fell, Ares mourned not with fury, but with silence, a silence that would last centuries. Even now, as war raged in Troy, he thought of them, of what might have been, of warriors who followed his path but rejected his pride. Perhaps they were his greatest creation. Perhaps they were his greatest failure. Chapter 9, The Necklace of Harmonia. Ares had many children, but none confounded him like Harmonia. Born of his union with Aphrodite, after the affair, after the golden net, after the laughter of Olympus, Harmonia emerged not from lust or vengeance, but from the one rare moment they had shared in peace. She was beauty refined, not seductive like her mother, nor brutal like her father. She was balance, grace, order. Her very presence seemed to calm the air around her, as if she were born to make the world less cruel. Ares didn't know what to make of her. She did not crave battle. She did not cry out for power. She wanted harmony. And still, she loved him. He would visit her in Thebes, cloaked in mortal guise, watching her from afar. When Cadmus, the city's founder, sought her hand, Ares did not object. In truth, he felt a strange, unfamiliar pride. Maybe this was how other gods felt when their children built cities, not armies. But the gods rarely give gifts without cost. At the wedding, Hephaestus arrived uninvited. The smith god, still bitter, offered a gift to Harmonia, a necklace. Stunning in its craftsmanship, flawless in its design, he claimed it would grant her beauty everlasting. Ares sensed the deceit, but said nothing. The necklace was cursed. From that moment on, tragedy stalked Harmonia's descendants. Madness, betrayal, blood. The house of Thebes would become one of the most cursed in history. Cadmus turned into a serpent. Their daughter gave birth to monsters. Their line would end in agony. Ares never forgave himself. He had fought titans. He had torn through armies. But he had not protected the one child who never asked anything of him. He would visit her tomb sometimes, long after Cadmus and the glory of Thebes had faded. He never prayed, but once, just once, he placed his sword upon the earth beside her name and left it there for a season. No one dared touch it. He whispered to the wind, "I am sorry." And for the first time in the long history of Olympus, the wind did not answer with mockery. It answered with silence. Chapter 10. Mars Ascends. The smoke of Troy had not yet settled when Ares felt it, a shift in the divine wind, a current moving westward. It carried whispers not of defeat, but of transformation. Rome. He had heard the name before, in prophecies tangled and half-formed, on the tongues of titans and oracles alike. But now the whispers took form. Rome was rising, not as a city of poetry and thought, like Athens, nor of tragic glory, like Troy, but of conquest, of will, of war. They would not call him Ares. They would call him Mars, and they would love him. In the hearts of the Romans, Mars was not a brute. He
was a father, a guardian. He stood beside their founders, Romulus and Remus, as legend and protector. His name was etched into banners, temples, and laws. He was not hidden behind Athena's shadow. He was the light. Ares, ever scorned by his own kin, watched this metamorphosis from Olympus, uncertain whether to laugh or weep. The Romans honored discipline, loyalty, structure. They saw in war not chaos, but necessity, not shame, but pride. And so Mars stood beside Jupiter, almost as an equal. Even the gods noticed. "What have they done to you?" Hermes once asked him with a sly grin. Ares said nothing, but for the first time in eons, he smiled. He descended quietly into their temples, walked among their generals, not as a raging tempest, but as an idea, a force, a principle. He did not need to scream anymore. He was heard. He stood upon the Palatine Hill at dusk as a Roman soldier laid a wreath before his statue. No blood, no fear, only reverence. He whispered, "So this is what it feels like." He knew deep down that it was not him they loved, but a version of him. A dream shaped by a people who needed structure more than storm. Yet he accepted it. Perhaps it was better to be loved as an ideal than feared as a reality. And so, Ares let Mars rise. He faded into the myth, no longer chasing approval, no longer raging against Athena or Zeus. He had found in Rome not a home, but a purpose. It was not redemption, it was something older. It was legacy. Epilogue. War without end. Troy burned. Ash and memory rose into the sky like prayers never answered. The war was over, but its echo would not fade. Ares stood on the edge of the world where the gods seldom walked, and the stars felt close enough to strike. His armor bore the dents of humiliation, the stains of grief, the cracks of transformation. But he did not shed it. The war had changed many. Heroes fell, cities crumbled. Even Olympus had learned caution, but Ares had learned silence. Not peace, never peace. For he understood something no other god quite grasped. War was not a moment. It was a rhythm, a cycle. It did not end, it only changed faces. Today it was fought with swords and spears. Tomorrow it would be fought with words, ideas, and silence that shattered alliances. He no longer fought to be loved, not by Zeus, not by mortals, not even by himself. He had become something else, a presence, a whisper, in the mind of every soldier trembling before their first charge, in the hand that cannot stop shaking after the last body falls, in the politician who wages war from behind a desk, in the child who throws the first stone. They do not build temples to Ares anymore, but they do not need to. He is there, in every battlefield, in every memory of violence, in every choice between rage and reason. He is not justice. He is not wisdom. He is not love. He is the storm beneath them all, and the war never truly ends.